All right, so today we will be discussing the third unit of this core subject rather, principles and procedures of material development for language learning. So the objective of this topic is to distinguish essential skills and principles needed by a writer of or the educator on materials development. All right, so start. Um, in recent years, there have been a number of insightful publications which have concerned themselves with how authors typically write ELT materials. For example, Prose 1998. As Tomlinson, forthcoming 2010, says, he reveals that many experienced authors rely on their intuitions about what works and make frequent use of activities from their repertoire, which seems to fit with their objectives. So in here, according to Tomlinson, the writers would just have to trust their guts as to what is working. And really somehow more on the affective side, not really having the guidelines to help them or to guide them on materials development. Or for example, the criteria that is needed. All right. So according to Tomlinson, materials should not be random recreations from repertoire, nor crafty clones of previously successful materials. So it's like what I mentioned. It shouldn't be something that's coming from luck or a gut feel. Okay, this is working, so let's continue doing this since it's already working. There's nothing wrong with it. But according to Tomlinson, there should be a coherent and principled application of what? Theories. It should be theory-based, theories of language learning acquisition in particular. And then principles of teaching as well. I believe you already have, or in the future, you will be discussing principles of teaching, which is really vital on creating materials and your execution of the created materials. Our current knowledge of how the target language is actually being used. How is it? How is the English language in the Philippines being actually used? So if you would notice, are the signs or the, what do you call this? I mean street signs, are they in Tagalog or in a dialect, in a particular dialect, or English is being used, or something else? All right, or some other language. And the fourth one, it should be a result of systematic observation and evaluation of materials in use. So it should have come into a process. A process should have been incorporated. So there are 4 criteria as mentioned by Tomlinson: theory, and specifically language theories, language acquisition and development theories, principles of teaching, the current state of the language, and the result of a process of observation and evaluation of the materials that has been in use. All right. Tomlinson also focused on the following 6 as those which should drive ELT materials developed. First one, so materials should expose the learners to language in authentic use. So we already had mentioned this before, exposure of the learner to the language. And authentic use, wherein it shouldn't be just so much bookish in a very unique way, or in accordance to the what's currently present in the society. Next is help learners to pay attention to features of authentic input. When we say authentic input, input is the language, all right, of the authentic language. Or meaning to say materials that are not really coming from the book, but something that's around us, the news articles, video materials, what else? Audio materials. Could be something that could be could not really be not really meant for learning, but it was used for it was used as a material for learning. Yeah, for example, the news articles, TV shows. We're going to analyze it or going to be exposed to that so that learners would have an exposure and an observable presence on how the material is or how the language is actually being used in real life. Next is provide learners with the opportunity to use target language to achieve communicative purposes. So the material should have areas or aspects that would give the learners opportunity to converse using the target language. Conversational dialogues most likely should be a simplest way of doing this through dialogues. All right. And then provide opportunities for outcome feedback. You know how important it is that we have feedback when it comes to materials. So that especially outcome, I mean, it should be something that they have done to show that they were able to comprehend the lesson on the material. All right. Next is achieve impact in the sense that they arouse and sustain learners' curiosity and attention. So when we are learning language, it's not, it is important, it is vital that learners still get to be curious with every part of the material, because that would serve as their motivation. As we all know, as we have discussed previously, that a language learner who's not motivated to learn the language, no matter how good the material is, still he will not be able to acquire it, because there is still, when we're learning language, there is affective aspect, the motivation. You should be more, it is important that that learner is motivated to acquire and to learn and to use the language. There's no anxiety. There are lesser or no zero or really zero negative impression or feeling towards the language or the target language. And then lastly, stimulate intellectual, aesthetic, and emotional involvement. So that's why, like I've mentioned, it's vital that the learner feels good about using the language. He is confident about using the language. All right, what is the basis of language learning material? For the subtopic, SLA-based principles for language learning material. So first question, what is the basis of language learning material? All right, principles drawn from what we know of SLA or second language acquisition this is the basis, the principle. Another question, are findings of SLA sufficiently strong, the theories, to warrant application to language pedagogy? This was a question asked by Ellis 2020. All right, so according to Tomlinson, we should not expect definite answers from SLA research. However, nor should we expect one research-based model to language acquisition to triumph over others. Alright. So we should not only base, or we should not get definite answers from SLA alone. How? But this shouldn't stop us applying what we do know. So it's a combination of what we know, and then as teachers, and also for the current situation, or the current status of the language, the target language, of the environment of the learner, and combination with SLA. All right. Now, what materials development draws from SLA research and theory? So here, affective. So the first one is affect. Affects what? Motivation, engagement, and anxiety. All right. So with language materials development, or materials development drawn from SLA, here are the aspects that would affect materials, the motivation. So especially in SLA, when you are when someone or a learner is learning a second language, he should be motivated. He or she should be motivated. 99% of teaching is making that the students feel interested in the material, according to Chomsky. That the motivation given by the teacher, or encouragement given by the motivation per se, given by the teacher, a positive motivation, positive, is I think there's no such thing as negative motivation. Yeah, a good motivation, rather, not positive, a good motivation would give interest. That's why it's motivation. When we do lessons in different topics, we have motivation to make students be interested with what you're going to learn for the day. All right, next is engagement. So if the students are already interested, the next step is for the students or the learner to be more engaged on what they are learning. We know that affective engagement is vital for long-term learning. If they are able to use the learning through in application on their daily lives. That is engagement. You get engaged, so not only during the class. It's also important that it's also important that we are able to use what we have learned in actual situations or in actual life. All right. And the effect of anxiety. Laughter, joy, and excitement, sorrow, and anger can promote learning. Neutrality, numbness, and nullity cannot. So anything that is, when the student feels comfortable and happy when on learning a language, he or she would always be confident on using it. All right. So meaning to say, the feelings, be it negative, especially positive feelings, would promote language learning. However, it's still more effective that there is a positive feeling towards the language. If you would remember before, there is anger and anxiety. Say, for example, there is sadness or sorrow. When you are being forced to learn something, but still you're able to learn something because you remember how it felt. Diba? Apart from the language, when you lost something, say for example, you lost your wallet. There's a learning there that next you felt sorrowful and you felt sad. But then you learned something from that. That next time you should be very careful where to put your personal belongings. Take care of your personal belongings. Same goes with laughter and joy. But when you're happy during when you're happy, especially particularly during a lesson, you remember that. You remember the joy that it brought you. Somehow the memory of that feeling would incorporate the learning that you had during the discussion or in class. Say, for example, the discussion has become very well, that you are able to recall that, okay, our lesson during that time is about adjectives. And then we were describing our classmates on the most positive traits that we can observe from them. I was very happy because my classmate told me I was kind, I was nice, I was pretty, I was obedient, I was intelligent, and so on. All right. So moving forward, grim determination and struggle are not part of language development process. So there is, it means to say that a happy learning environment or a joyful or a positive learning environment is much encouraged when it comes to language learning. All right. All right. So let's have this. Principle number 1, affective challenge. All right. So these are still under SLA principles. Affective challenge. Materials need to engage the learner affectively. How? Interesting, motivating, challenging, and relevant. The material should be interesting to them. Of course, how would the learners embrace and get motivated if they lack interest? So however, no matter how good the material is, if it's not of their interest, they will not even take a look of it. And then challenging. After being motivated, it should trigger their curiosity to learn more and be challenged with what they're going to do next and what they're about to learn. And then also relevant or somehow timely. That's why there are aspects in because there are aspects in our lives that are really changing. And for some reasons, learners would be very much interested to express what they think of the current situation in our lives, especially as we have discussed, as we have mentioned, language learning, especially creation of materials, should come from daily situations. I mean, not exactly like that, but a part of that should come from the natural way of living or through the authentic materials or authentic info. Next, materials need to help learners feel at ease. How? Humanize. Engage all intelligence and learning style. Do not box themselves. So what you want them to do, let them explore. Let them feel that they are free and creative to learn. All intelligence is multiple intelligence and learning style. We have learners have different learning styles. Each one is unique. on how they learn. So, and through that learning style, they are more comfortable using that style. All right. Even you have your own learning style, and you're at ease on using those learning style. That's why the materials needs to help them feel that they're at ease, or they are encouraged to use their learning style. Let them be free to use their own creativity and style of learning. All right. Cognitive challenges. Input needs to engage the learners cognitively. How? Rich, meaningful, comprehensive input as consisting authentic language and authentic use. Cognitive challenge. Input serves not just teach language, but to release it. All right. So in cognitive, it should be rich, meaningful, and comprehend or understandable inputs or contents of authentic language, the language that is being used on a daily on our daily lives. What is the cognitive challenge? The input should serve not to teach but to release it, but to use it. Use the language. Teaching is just, giving, saying this and that, but actual performance of the language or actual use of the language is much better. All right. So like to input to output continuum. Output, both a product and process of language acquisition. So they have executed the product or the output, have executed perhaps an activity. They have created a drama. They have simulated something, a situation. All right. Say, for example, simple dialogue. If it's not English, some other language, a simple dialogue between friends using the target language. It's a product because it's an output that was done by the student, but then also a process because they need to translate or to use the language, the target language, into saying the dialogues. All right. Next principle is materials need to provide opportunities for meaningful and purposeful language use. Rich, meaningful input stimulus, authentic language in use. So the actual use of language on the daily lives. It's not only for lesson, more on the construction of sentences, more on the translation, but really, how is it really used on the daily lives? Communicatively. Next, articulate syllabus is respective. Materials generate organic text-driven syllabus. So this is more on the, this is more as the obligation or principles for the teachers. So what was written on your guide on the syllabus should be articulated or should be delivered on the lessons. Follow the syllabus as a guide or the course guide. Curriculum guide for elementary and high school, senior high. Next is principle number 6. Learners need to be encouraged to notice linguistic features of language. How? Language awareness rising activities. So there should be lessons still about language or linguistic features. Apart from that, they are also, you introduce the basics of language, from grammar, from the sounds to grammar to spellings, and from the sounds to spellings to grammar and to lengthy paragraphs. All right. Next. The noticing hypothesis. All right. According to Smith, 1990s onwards, input does not become intake for language learning unless it is noticed, consciously registered. Right. So the content cannot become intake or absorbed for language learning unless it is noticed. There should be or the learner should see and notice or recognize the input or should understand the input. People learn about the things that they pay attention to. Correct. If they do not see or notice the material, how would they learn from that? And do not learn much about the things that they not attend to bid. True enough, because if you do not pay attention, if a learner do not pay attention to what you're teaching, his consciousness or his mind is flying somewhere else, there would be no learning. There would be no learning. There would be no actual learning. Same goes with language. So the material should get the attention of the learner. So that is the noticing hypothesis. The material should be noticed by the learner or should get the attention of the learner. Subliminal language learning is impossible. There should be actual or noticeable language learning. Noticing is necessary and sufficient condition for converting input to intake. From the content to intake is to from the content to what is understood. From input, what is there, what's written, to what is understood, intake, to what you have, what can be processed by themselves. All right. On language learning, noticing the gap. So there should, the materials that you're going to learn, that you're going to create, should be teaching what's lacking from the previous materials that has been developed. Directing learners' attention, awareness arising. All right, so it should be, it should give learners, or you should project learners that there's a need for them to learn this topic. Say, for example, in grade, you'll be handling grade 7. All right. So there is, still there are topics about nouns and pronouns and adjectives. But you need, to make sure that you get that the learning that they are getting is different from what they had during grade 6. Should give them, they should emphasize the importance and they let them be aware that this is a new learning from the previous that you have already learned. And that and then the inductive process wherein there is positive way of enforcing the lesson. Then data-driven learning, so that this is you give activities that would enhance and that would highly apply the learning. All right. Questions so far? Let's just have the introduction for this, okay? So 3 proposals for principled approach to the development of ELT materials. So one of the things that materials writers need to do is to develop flexible frameworks to help them produce effective materials to target learners in principled and coherent ways. So as mentioned by Tomlinson, there should be flexible framework, not really not boxing the pattern, because language is, as we all know, is constantly changing in time. That's why in developing language material, the framework should also be flexible, not only applicable to a certain period of time, so that the materials development principle can be sustainable all throughout the time that throughout years and in other what do you call this, and in other era or decades, another decade for learning rather. So here are the main principles of language acquisition which he followed, Tomlinson followed when developing the materials, and some principles for materials development which he derived from them. So there are several. I think there are 6. You just have to browse this through. There. All right. So I think we should end from here and then continue the discussion next meeting. So if you have questions, please do not hesitate to PM or just write it down, and then we will be discussing the question later or during our next or during the synchronous session that we will be having. Okay, that will be all. Thank you for listening and God bless.